Good morning. It's me again. Welcome to the conversation with Kelly Diamond on Voluntary Virtues. You can catch me every Thursday at 6:30 Pacific time in the morning or 9:30 Eastern time a.m. You can also catch my written word every week on Monday morning with globalwealthprotection.com. So, as an extension of the immigration discussion that I've been having for the past 2 weeks, I think there is more to be said on the issue of national sovereignty. And I touched on that only slightly in the first episode of immigration. It's not 100% fallacious, but if you are going to believe and contend and argue on behalf of national sovereignty, then you negate all other forms of sovereignty, right? You negate your own personal sovereignty. So, because they can't coexist. Now, let's really clarify the terms, because I don't want us to be operating on different terms. I want us to be understanding the working definition that I'm basing all of this on. So, dictionary.com, I'm not going to go with any legal terminology because that pertains to a small elite group of people who like to speak a different language. So I'm going to go with the basic working definition. It says, as a noun, it's the supreme ruler, like a king or a queen, a person with supreme power or authority, group, body of persons or state having the supreme power or authority, and I'll get to that in a second. The adjectival version of it, having supreme rank, power, or authority, supreme, preeminent, indisputable. So you can actually have like a sovereign right, which is kind of nice. Greatest in degree, utmost, extreme, being above all others in character, importance, excellence, etc. Okay, that's the working definition. Now, I don't care if you want to say that the country has this sovereignty, which is the argument that people are making to defend the borders. But if you're going to argue for national sovereignty, then you are negating your own individual sovereignty. And the irony that I find in all of this is that the people who are advocating for border control are the people who are not only advocating national sovereignty, but at the same time arguing this individual sovereignty. I mean, I was protesting the protesters last weekend, and while I never deal in protest with the government, I will absolutely protest private individuals all day long if they're really that obnoxious. But they had "Don't Tread on Me" flags flying, while ironically treading all over the individual sovereignty of would-be immigrants. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I think that there's some conflict. I think there's some misunderstandings of what it is to be independent and free, claiming sovereignty while still advocating for a state. You can't have both. So the person who was telling me this was likening, and I'm sure you've heard this argument, coming into the country as coming into your own house. Right? It's coming into your own house. Like that, if you're going to come into my house, then knock on the door and ask for permission and all of these things. Okay, I mean, you can't really argue that, though. It's not the same, because the country isn't yours. I know this is a profound notion that a lot of statists don't seem to understand. The country is not yours. I don't care where you are. The country ain't yours. Okay. The physical land does not belong to you. There's absolutely no deed or title that says it is. And even figuratively, the country doesn't belong to you. Politically, the country does not belong to you. I'll tell you who belongs to who, though. When you're arguing national sovereignty, you belong to the country. You are its possession. Think about it. If you're going to argue the house analogy, coming into my house means everything in it is mine. There we go. If it's my house, the shit inside, all mine. Kids roaming around, mine. So if it's my domain, and by extension everything that's in it, and you're coming into it, it's mine. Right? I mean, short of the guests that are coming and going, the shit inside's mine. Now, if you're residing in my house, and the house is in my name, then you belong to me. You are subject to my rules. Even as a guest, you're subject to my rules. If it's my house, it's my music, my food, my habits, my decor, my everything. And if you don't like it, right, the argument is you can leave. The difference is I'm not sending you to another country. I'm saying that within this small property line, whatever it is, whether it's my 400 square foot apartment or my 400 acre plot of land, my rules, my land. Okay. Now, people seem to get that on a personal level. They do. Because everybody's got their domicile. They've either got a rental agreement with their name on it, an arrangement that says this is theirs, or they actually own the land and they've got a deed or a title to it. So people get this idea of ownership. This is not some foreign concept. But where it gets sticky is when you try to apply that on any governmental level. Here, let's take a smaller example, but still government owning the land. Okay? If you go, whatever city you're in, if that city is your city, right, then everything in it that's public ostensibly is yours. So if that's the case, then you should be able to go to the park whenever you wish. You should be able to go into City Hall whenever you wish. But City Hall has operating hours. They lock their door. They lock their door, as does the public library, as do public schools. They all lock their doors after a certain hour. I don't have a key. Do you have a key to your public schools? Do you have a key to your City Hall? Did they give you a key? Can you come and go as you please in there? No? It ain't yours. There you go. It ain't yours. Yours means you can come and go as you please. I mean, I think that's, I don't even know. This is what's sad, is that this is a 6-year-old argument? Like, this is something that I could be discussing with a person in first grade. But there's people that still don't get this. So you should be able to go to the park after hours. Even though the sign says, park operational from sunup to sundown. It's 2 in the morning. There's no sun around. It's pitch black out there. And you're sitting on the park bench? No, no, no. Your employees, also known as the cops, will summarily remove you from that bench. How do I know this? Kelly Thomas. That's how I know this. The Kelly Thomas case in Fullerton fully explains in great gory detail how public property is not yours. And it's anything but yours. Okay? So to claim that the country is yours, I don't want them coming into my country. You're acting like it's yours. Well, it ain't yours. It's not yours. You have absolutely no say. The person who adopted the piece of highway has more say over that piece of highway than you do, and your tax dollars pay for it. Now, let me explain something to you. I understand. The argument is, well, my tax dollars pay for it. Yeah, I know your tax dollars pay for it. I do. I know. But just because your tax dollars pay for it doesn't make it yours. Think about it. When people argue for the government, okay, they got to back up a little bit. When people argue in favor of the government, what they're saying is that, well, the government provides a certain amount of goods and services to the public. They provide the roads, they provide the schools, they provide the utilities. Okay, It doesn't matter whether you use them or not. They provide them. You're going to have these things whether you like it or not. It's for your own good. And if you're not grateful about it, you're not a patriot, you shameful bastard. Okay? But they buy you all these services. So technically, right, your tax dollars are buying these things. They technically want to call taxation commerce, which if anybody buys into that, I can't. Like, I just can't with that. You can't honestly tell me that forcing a good or service onto me and forcing my money away from me and violently taking my money is commerce. That's not commerce. That's a crime. If I did that to a private individual, I mean, I'd expect to get shot. I'd expect to get arrested. I'd expect to go to jail. So I can't do that to you and honestly call it commerce. Okay? But the government wants to call that commerce. So your tax dollars are really you buying shit you don't need. Okay? I'm willing to use that argument for a second. Only because, I mean, it's silly as it is, I'm still going to use that argument. Now, let's say it is commerce. You're buying these services, blah, blah, blah. Okay. I go to, I don't know, any business, right? Let's say I go to a CPA who does my taxes and my payroll. I'm a businessman. I go and I get my payroll and my taxes done with this guy. CPA does this for me. Voluntarily. This is a voluntary interaction in exchange. So this is real commerce, okay? And he says, all right, for services rendered, you owe me $300. Okay, thanks. So I give him the $300. He then goes and takes the $300 and buys a bottle of whiskey with it. Really old scotch. That scotch ain't mine. Just because I did some business with him and I gave him $300 for those services, and then he goes and takes the $300 and buys a bottle of scotch, and the bottle of scotch is not by extension mine. The money is no longer mine. So anything that's bought with that money ain't mine. Okay? So the same is true with your tax dollars. I understand your tax dollars, pay for the upkeep of all the federal land. But the federal land isn't yours. Just because you happen to be sharing this geography called the United States, and just because its government summarily steals money from you on a semi-regular basis and uses that money to keep up that land on any level, or at least to regulate it on some level, doesn't make it yours. You have no say in what happens to government land on any level, on city level, state level, or federal level. Okay? You have no say. But I'm going to go one step further. That is that if it makes you feel any better, cities don't have a shit ton of sovereignty either. They have more than you do. City governments have more sovereignty than you do, but not a whole lot, because they're still superseded by the state. And the state is superseded by the federal government. So if you want to look at it in a more palatable and individual basis, or on a more private level, imagine you're the entry-level employee who has no idea what's going on, right? You're just going about doing your busy work. City is the assistant manager, has more authority than you do, but certainly not the authority of the owner, but can tell you a few things like when to water your lawn and how much water you can use and how green your grass should be. And they can tell you how fast to go and on the street, and they can tell you where you can walk across the street, and they can tell you all sorts of stuff like that, and they can enforce all those laws. But that's it. All right. Then the state has a little bit more say. So even though San Francisco wants to be a sanctuary city, and even though at some point San Francisco wanted to legalize gay marriage, and Gavin Newsom was actually ordaining people as being homosexuals as being married, the state trumped him. Right? San Francisco is not a sovereign city. It's still subject to the state of California. Right? It's a sovereign city amongst other cities, So other assistant managers can't tell them what to do, right? But at the end of the day, the general manager is going to come in and say, yeah, you can't do that. So the general manager is a state. General manager says, well, I'll tell you what to do about education on every city level. I'm going to tell you what to do on marriage. I'm going to tell you what you can and cannot do for guns. And I have a certain amount, as a state, I have a certain amount to say. That trumps the city no matter what the city wants, right? And then the state says, you know what, I really want to legalize drugs. This is nonsense. I don't want to be part of this freaking drug war. Oh, you don't? Well, I'm sorry. I'm the federal government. I'm the owner of this corporation called the United States. And I say, we're still having a drug war. You're batten down the hatchets and fill every one of your little tiny towns with a bear cat, because we're going to war. Okay. The state isn't really sovereign either, which is tragic, because anybody who wants to argue what the founders wanted, the founders originally set up this thing so that each state would be its own nation state. It was supposed to operate a little more independent than how the EU operates. Now, they're still supposed to be separate countries. Each state was supposed to technically be little separate countries. They're just supposed to be federated for certain things. Federalized for certain things. That's it. Certain services. They all kind of said, okay, we'll co-op together to do this. So now, states' rights don't even exist, really. I mean, think about it. Does anybody lose their shit when I cross a state line? Not even a little bit. Shit is not lost. So this whole thing about let's protect the borders, is only from international people, not state to state. So even though there's a measles outbreak somewhere in the Northeast, that person in one of those northeastern states can come right on down to the Southwest in California and bring their disease with them. I know people who had scabies, and they can go from state to state. I know people who had measles, and they could go from state to state, and nobody's going to say jack shit about it. So I don't know. I mean, but if we're getting scabies, if we're getting Mexican scabies, that's a different story. You can't be having that. You gotta have American scabies, I guess. But this whole thing of sovereignty, then it makes me wonder, well, okay, if each state is sovereign, then why aren't each of them guarding their borders against disease and against gangs and against, would-be moochers off of their welfare, right? But the state borders, they don't even mean anything. So state sovereignty is kind of an obsolete notion. I mean, they're trying with the whole Obamacare. Oh, wait, I mustered something up here. I think I don't know what it is. It's the 10th Amendment. It says I can do my own thing sometimes when I'm the state. Does that mean anything to anybody? Not really. Doesn't mean a whole lot to anybody. So state sovereignty, 10th Amendment, and all that nonsense, I mean, that's long since gone, right? So the state doesn't have any sovereignty because of these supremacy clauses. Well, if that's the case, because sovereignty, as we've defined it, is supreme, right? Supreme. That's it. And then it doesn't get any higher. So if that is where you're at with, your jurisdictions and your authority and your autonomy, if that's the supreme thing, if you're going to argue that the person with the supreme authority, the entity with the supreme authority, is at the national level, then man, you are fourth in line as an individual. You are at least fourth in line. And as an individual, you need to shut up and recognize your place and sit your ass down. Telling me about, I don't want people coming over these borders. This is my country. I want to take my country back. You're taking your country back? It was never yours. Grow up. The country was never yours. You have always belonged to the country. You know how I know this? It's called a social security number and a birth certificate. You belong to the country. You are its possession. You are its subject. Okay? I mean, I hate that. I feel like I'm breaking news to people. I feel like I'm telling them something new and profound. Like this is a recent phenomenon. No. That's how countries work. You are its subject. Now, I don't know who can actually say that they own the country, but I'll tell you this. You can't get pissed off at who comes into my place. Let's be really clear. You're telling me that crossing the border is like breaking into your house. Bullshit. It has nothing to do with breaking into your house. It ain't your house. If I let somebody you don't like into my personal space, my address, my house, my property, and you don't like it, you don't get to have an opinion on that. Well, yeah, I guess you can, but you certainly don't get a vote on it. You don't get a say on it. I'm not going to confer with you and see if it's cool. I'm just going to let the motherfucker in. I mean, so you being pissed that the country is letting in people is like you getting pissed that I'm letting people into my house. Well, they're going to bring down the country. Right, they're going to bring down the country. Certainly, some migrants from Latin America are going to bring down the country. Well, they ruined their country. No, they didn't. They're coming from painfully despotic places where they had absolutely no say in anything. They had the least amount of say in their country to where they couldn't have had any effect on it. They're the most irrelevant subjects in their country. They're irrelevant to their country. The people who destroyed their country are their leaders. They're national sovereigns, whoever is running the national sovereign show over there, ruined their country. They, the plebes, did not ruin the country because in order to ruin something, you have to have some sort of control over it. Okay? If you don't have any control over the policies of what's going on, if you have no actionable power over the physical things within the country, you can't be responsible for breaking it. I mean, what is this? Some sort of X-Men episode? What, you broke it with my mind? No. I broke it with my ideology? That's what people think. People think I can break this country with my ideology. It's sheeple like you bleeding hearts who want to open the borders and blah. Wait, no. Me just advocating an idea doesn't break countries. I don't bring down economies with this, okay? I'm not the one printing money as fast as I possibly can. That's the Fed. The Fed is devaluing your dollar. I'm not devaluing your dollar. If anything, I'm trying to prop it up. I buy globally. I don't buy American. I don't keep the money here. I try to send the money out. So I'm doing the best I can to deflate the dollar. I mean, when you tell me I'm part of the problem, I'm the one not listening to the bullshit laws. I'm the one advocating against all the tyranny. I'm the one who's calling out the fact that we have this police state. So this whole idea of national sovereignty, the law is the law, you have to respect it, and this, that, and the other. Okay, if that's what you think, if you honestly are arguing the position of national sovereignty, then you have talked yourself straight out of individual sovereignty, and please don't talk to me about individual freedom anymore and this whole don't tread on me bullshit. You can't have both. Not if you're saying, I need to recognize the supreme authority of the nation first. The supreme authority of the country. If I'm to recognize that as being a valid argument, I'll go ahead and do it. But then I also recognize the fact that you have completely relinquished all of your individual sovereignty in the process. Because you have. You can't have individual sovereignty. You have no say over your life except for what the national government says you can have a say over. If the national government says you can't have a say over who you marry, that trumps all the states, and it's over. If the national government says you have to buy insurance, You have to buy car insurance. You have to buy health insurance. You have to buy all this stuff. If the government says you have to get a permit, you get a permit. And if you got to get a permit, passport is your permission slip to come and go. Driver's license is your permission slip to drive your own property on public grounds. Okay? Business license, a permission slip to engage in commerce. Gun permit, permission to acquire property. In the state of California, you need a permit to smoke marijuana. Dear government, may I please smoke some weed? Check here for yes, check here for no. XOXO, Kelly. Permission slips. And you're telling me you're free? They're going to disrupt your way of life? What way of life? You don't even have a say in your own way of life. You have no say in your way of life, and you're telling me your freedoms are in jeopardy. Your freedoms aren't in jeopardy. They're already gone. This idea that this has just gone too far. Wait, now the Mexicans hate us for our freedoms? Is that really where we're headed with this bullshit? It's gotten so preposterous that now not only do brown people in caves in Afghanistan who herd goats, this guy hates me for my freedoms. I don't know if he even knows that the United States exists, but okay, let's go with this. And then the immigrant who wants to actually live here wants to destroy here also. This all stems from the fact that we think we feel justified in guarding the border because it belongs to us. Prove it then. Show me the fucking paper trail that shows your name saying, I own the United States. Well, it's run by we the people. No, it's not. No, it's not. Just because there's a poem on some parchment paper parked somewhere in Washington, D.C. in a museum doesn't make it yours. It's not a valid document anymore. If it was a valid document, then half the shit that's going on wouldn't be happening. We got to get back to the Constitution. You can get back to the Constitution. You're still a subject to the country. You still belong to the country. You still belong to the government. You're still not your own person. You're still not autonomous. You are not sovereign. If you want to start arguing liberty, principles of liberty, principles of freedom, if that's what we're going to do, if you really want to get in the ring with me and talk about this shit, then first and foremost, you can't belong to somebody else. If you're somebody else's property, then you're nothing more than a lapdog. And I've said this before. Just because you let the dog run around in the backyard don't make it free. Just because the federal government lets you run around in your backyard doesn't make you free. The fact that there are people with automatic and semi-automatic weapons at our border prepared to shoot innocent, scared individuals who are just looking for a better way of life doesn't make you safe either. And just because you got somebody prepared to molest you at an airport doesn't make you safe. And just because you've got cops patrolling the streets prepared to molest you for simply questioning their authority doesn't make you safe. And just because you pay taxes doesn't make this whole kit and caboodle yours. You either have a say of your own individual pieces of property that you have acquired, and you have legal and legitimate acquisition of that property that's in your name, or none of it's yours, and it belongs to the country. But what isn't happening is this country ain't yours. National sovereignty is completely incompatible with individual sovereignty. You need to pick one. And once you pick it, if you pick individual sovereignty, then shut up about the border. Because that's not your property. And if you're going to pick national sovereignty, then shut up about the border, because that still ain't your property. All right. Have a good week. I'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching. Bye.